Splendid. Good evening. Well, I suppose the earliest thing that I was interested in musically when I was a kid was science fiction TV theme tunes, including the wonderful Doctor Who theme tune. And I kind of think that's the thing that sort of set me off on this path. The first album I ever bought, I don't know if you can see that, Jean-Michel Jarre, a double tape with Oxygen and Equinox, which I bought when I was about 8 or 9. Um, and I just used to listen to that endlessly in bed with my headphones on. And I think that makes me want to make music that never ends, because it just like flows from one thing into the next, into the next, into the next. So yeah, I think that's one of my influences as well. I really wanted to play piano and things as a kid, but my parents wouldn't let me. And because my dad kept moving jobs and we kept moving around, I never was in the school at the right time to take any lessons. So I didn't actually get my first keyboard until 1989 when I was about 20. And I bought a really cheap Korg Sigma. Do you remember the Korg Sigma? It's a monophonic. Um, what do they call them now? It's kind of like just got little rocker switches to select different presets. So like you can have your bone and your synthy and your blah 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 and bass guitar. And it got two joysticks, one for pitch and vibrato, and one for the filter. It was pretty good actually. Had aftertouch, which was really weird. The whole keyboard rocked. And it had a built-in music stand that popped up out the back and loads of little controls. Every preset had its own little control over the top of it to adjust the parameter, and you could turn them all on at once if you wanted to. They're about £1,500 now, and I paid 60 quid for it from a second-hand shop down the road in 1989. It was a racket. It was a complete racket. I mean, the thing was pretty mad, really, because it's like designed as a solo keyboard thing, but it had like a quarter tone button, which turned it into like something that you'd never hear. No one would ever want to use because it's just like completely mad. So, I think that's kind of like had an influence on me as well. All these weird strangenesses. Um, and after that, I kind of like got into MIDI and started buying MIDI synths in the 90s, like the Juno 106 and stuff like that, JX10. And I was running them all using Pro 24 and an old Atari ST. Yeah, Pro 24 I used, and I recorded my first album in the late 90s, early 2000s using that, and it was all sequenced by the Atari, and I couldn't play very much of it live or anything. I just programmed it all in and fiddled around with it until it sounded right. Um, and I really wanted to play live, and I sort of started playing in bands in the early 90s, sort of more rock prog stuff, um, doing fairly simple stuff really, but in that sort of vein. Um, so I kind of like I was always never really happy with doing my own solo stuff, and it's funny actually because yesterday, September the 11th, the first ever solo gig I had was the day the Twin Towers were blown up. I played in an open mic night in a wine bar in Nottingham with a Supernova 2 and an AN1X and then couple of Electribes for drums and sequences. And it was just improvised using like everything synced up arpeggiators and stuff like that. I mean, the Supernova was a fantastic synth. You could layer so many things on top of each other and sort of make really complicated stuff with us pressing one note. Um, I had the keyboard. I had the keyboard. And I've got a little Nova desktop version which I use from time to time when I want that sort of thing. Oh yeah, yeah, I know. That's it. That was the good thing about virtual analog. Um, I mean, I love my AN1X. I've got no idea why I sold it. Fantastic synth. Um, oh yeah, I remember why I bought a Profit 600, and that was even better. Just seemed ridiculous having all these things. But yeah, I mean, I've had loads of stuff over the years. Um, but getting back to how modulator ESP started. Um, yeah, so in the early 2000s, the band that I was in, I got really fed up with just rehearsing, really, playing the same thing over and over and over and over again. And then, like, one of them, others going, "Oh, I don't like this anymore." And that was my favourite bit. And I've been like working on getting more improv bits in, like we'll have an extended section here where we can just go a bit mad and everything. And that was my favourite bits, and they stopped wanting to do that. So, and around this sort of time, I kind of discovered that there was a British electronic music scene. Um, I got my first PC in about 2001, and there was this guy called Andy Pickford who'd I'd accidentally discovered his albums because in the record shop they were in the rack next to Palace. I'd been into Palace. They're a Scottish prog band from the 80s. I really liked them. When the CDs came out, they were on the same label as Andy Pickford, this Scottish label called Centaur. I, they both began with P, so I thought that those look really good. I'll buy these, and they were like just electronic music, very sort of like symphonic, almost kind of rocky, but lots of synths. And one of his first ones was kind of like a Blade Runner soundtrack with loads of samples of similar-ish things to Blade Runner, and it was all really quite good. I'm actually friends with Andy now. Met him at gigs, and we friends on Facebook and chat about things. I even played with him in a band last year. Um, we did a gig at a festival doing a load of Hawkwind style stuff with Nick Turner, the guy. Have you heard of what's his name now? Oh, I can't remember his name now. The guitarist guy. He was a synths person as well. Released a load of stuff. Steve Hillman. Steve Hillman was the guitarist, and he got Andy Pickford on keyboards and a couple other people. Nick Turner vocals and sax, and me doing all the synthy wibbly bits in the background. Oh, it was fantastic. I mean, as a band, we were really good. I mean, Nick Turner's getting old now, so he was a bit tired. He actually fell asleep and lost track of where he was. But the poor old guy's lovely. I mean, everyone loves him, and it's just like, it's fantastic. It was a really good gig, and went down really well. We were on last at this festival, so it was really good. Yeah. Anyway, so where was I? Oh yeah, British electronic music scene. Started discovering bands like Redshift, Radio Massacre International, Air Sculpture, all in like 2001, 2002. Discovered that they were all doing like really improv stuff, which I hadn't realised anyone had ever done at that time. I thought it was all just like composed and everything, and I thought this is really good. And then shortly after that, I think I discovered the Tangerine Dream bootleg thing, the leaves and stuff like that, and started listening to those, and was like, my God, this is amazing. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I kind of liked is the losing the way bit. I think I like those bits where they just like sometimes go off on one, and you're just like, well, it doesn't really matter what happens because it's live, it's a gig. They can tidy it up if they ever release it. I mean, some of their studio versions of the live albums are a bit interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, started going to gigs. At the National Space Centre in Leicester. They used to have some gigs there. I saw quite a few things there and started doing my own thing. Uh, I think around that time I had a car full of equipment when I played a gig. My first gig, I had the Supernova, the AN1X, a wave station, called Karma, two rack boxes with a microwave XT in, a Nord modular, an MMT8 doing some sequences off the microwave. Uh, what was it called now? The Regal work, a Dopfer Regal work, which was a kind of sequencer cum MIDI controller fader box thing that I used to sequence stuff off the Karma. I think I had the MOS board in it, you know, the analog modeling thing that they did based on Z1, and I used that and an Electribe ER1 for drums, and it was all improvised. Everything was like kind of like, you know, I had some sequences, but I could mix them together in whichever way I wanted to. I could like switch between different patterns on things and then play them with different things off the Nord modular. And the first time I did it, it really worked, and I was just like hooked then. Well, I've tried sequencing on the fly, but what I found is works best is if you've got something basic to start off with that you can then sort of like edit. I mean, at the moment I'm using this little thing called a 512 vector, sequencer, which is a little Euro rack sequencer that I've got in its own little box on its own. I haven't got any Euro rack anymore. I did have once. That's another story. Yeah, so I've got this little thing. It's like that big, videotape size, and I've got that plugged into a Dave Smith Tetra at the moment. 4 parts. Yeah, it's a fantastic little synth. Just enough controls on the surface to edit it as you're going. I mean, I can completely change sequences whilst it's going. You can randomize things, you can change things, change the key, change everything, change the speed of the sequence, change the direction, all sorts, loads of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think technology at the moment, I can do a gig with what I can fit in a little suitcase. Well, I've done lots of gigs with less than a little suitcase, but you know, I could do a proper gig with synths and sequences and rhythms and things like that. I mean, I've done abstract gigs where I've just taken a toy sampler and an iPod to load sounds into it and a loop pedal. Yeah. I know. Should have got a Modi X instead of the montage because then yeah, I mean, I bought a Modi X6 when they came out, and it's just amazing. I can hold it up with one hand. It's so light. They do a really good back. Oh yeah, yeah, yes. I've had some very heavy synthesizers over the years, and I know what you mean. And I don't like really gigging with them anymore. I take I take some to gigs where I can park outside and carry it in a few steps. But I mean, I remember the first gig I played. There's an experimental night that a friend of mine ran in Nottingham. It was called Mantile, and I played that with an Andromeda, a Prophet VS, a Nord G2, a P3 sequencer, and a Proteus 2000 module. And I took that in my car into the city centre, parked outside, nearly got a parking ticket. There's no parking. And then went up the stairs with all this stuff, 2 flights of stairs. And I was like, just squeezed it onto the edge of the little stage, which is like, room's not much wider than my living room. It was an old living room in an old house once. Oh, stupid. And the next time I played there, I played with the Nord G2 and a sampler. That's P404. That was it. Uh, I don't know. I bought mine second hand off a friend. So and it's in the cupboard upstairs. I haven't used it for about 10 years. And one day I'll get it out. I mean, I used to use it hooked up to my P3 for sequencing because you could have like 16 different parts running off it. 16-part multitimbral, fully analog synth. Not many of those around. Yeah. Ooh. Oh yeah, that was the setup I used for my last radio show a couple of weeks ago now, nearly. Um, I was using the base station Micro Freak and JDXI just for like drones and things, with the VCS3 doing its weirdness in the background. And like gradually layering up drones off the three synthesizers, basically, just all improvised. Yeah, that will be out on Monday. I finished doing the cover design this morning, just before it's called originally. Put them on bank. Put them on bank. Yeah, yep, yeah. It's fortnightly. I I started doing it originally in 2009, and I did it every fortnight pretty much until 2017, when I like stopped because I had other things I was doing, and it was on hiatus until the beginning of the lockdown, when I thought, oh, sod this, I'm starting my radio show up again. And I've done 10 shows this year, so that's 20 weeks worth. No, it's called Adventures in Sound, and it's basically me uh, picking a selection of instruments and improvising with them for an hour in whatever way I feel like. I mean, I've done anything and everything on this show. It's ridiculous. Yeah. You- No, I've never done it randomly, but maybe I should. Yeah, well, I mean, if it's a reasonable synthesizer, I could probably do an hour's worth of music with it with a looper, as long as you've got some control and it can make a reasonable number of sounds. I mean, it would be on the experimental end then. I've done those as well. I've done very noisy things. I mean, I've got a load of. Have you heard of Bug Brand? I've got a load of his little weevils, which are kind of like small circuit board based noise devices, and I hook those up and do stuff with them occasionally. I've got virtually the whole set since I started. Sort of found out about them, really, about five of them now. I've got, yeah, I think so. I've, yeah, some of them are very chaotic. He had this starve power function on them, which he turns down the power, and everything just goes random and wobbles around. Which is why they're called weevils, because they're very strange and insect-like sometimes in their behaviour, wobbling around. Yeah. The last the last one he brought out is called a chirper. He's actually not called it a weevil. It's called a chirper, and it's two oscillators that are feed into each other and into a filter. So it's kind of a bit like a baby VCS3 noise machine, and it's fantastic. Yeah. Oh God, yeah. So around 2009, I think I actually started building a VCS3 type synthesizer in Eurorack, Dopfer. So I had a 6U 84 HP case, the normal small case, filter, a couple of filters, oscillators, joystick, lots of LFOs, mixers, and things. I think I had a weird kind of delay type thing in as and an effects processor as well, and it was kind of like nearly good enough to do sort of ish VCS3 ish sounds. Um, and I was quite happy with it, and I did some gigs with it and used it a bit. I even got a ribbon controller for it. That was good. Um, and thus began my love of ribbon control devices. Um, but then in 2010, I was on the Muff Wiggler forum because Muff Wiggler is the best place to buy secondhand modules in the universe. And they had a meet organised in Kingston in London in April. And I went down to this meet and I actually laid hands on a VCS3 for the first time ever. I mean, I'd known about them for years. I mean, I read about them on album covers, BBC Radiophonic Workshop and all that stuff, using them and everything. And I was really wanted to buy one. And every year they got more expensive and more difficult to get hold of. And I'd been talking to Robin Wood at EMS about getting on the list and everything. But what I really wanted, he wasn't going to make, because he had more people lined up for the Synthy, the suitcase version, than he actually had suitcases. So he had like 40 left or something like that, and those were all allocated, even though he hadn't built any yet. And he could make the Putney or the Synthy, depending on which model he wanted, Mark 1 or Mark 2. So the cows come home, because it's just a wooden box and they're easy to make, but he couldn't get the particular type of suitcase anymore, and he didn't want to retool to fit into a different type case, although he did say that he might think about that, but he's getting on a bit, and this was 10 years ago, so I doubt it's ever going to happen, because it's not, I don't know if he's even sold the 40 that he was making. So anyway, I went down to this thing and I tried this VCS3 and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I'm never going to be able to get one, but at least it was nice to try one. And then I just came all the way back from London, across London, back to Nottingham on the train, got home after midnight, logged into Muff Wiggler, and there, lo and behold, was one for sale. And it was like, I don't believe this. And it was like offers. And it was the guy's Thighpaw Sandra. Have you heard of Thighpaw Sandra? Tim Lewis lives in Wales. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I basically didn't know what to offer because I didn't really know what they were worth. So I asked him how much he wanted, and he said 4 grand, but I need the money tomorrow, sort of thing. And it's quite sad, really, because his dog had a really bad accident and broken its back, and he had the insurance, and he needed the money to get his dog sorted. So I was like, right. Well, it's Saturday now, so obviously I can't do anything till the bank's open on Monday. And on Monday, I rang the bank up and said, I want to take some money out of my account, please. And they said, oh, you can't take it out today. We haven't got enough in. We'll have to order it for you. So I ordered the money. Luckily, I had enough. I mean, actually, I'd been saving up for synthesizers for a long time and not really bought any, because I'd wanted something like this. And I just thought, well, I'll just start saving in case I ever get the chance. So I got the money. So I went to the bank, got the money out, and I had to drive to Bristol. And we were supposed to be meeting up in Bristol, but then he couldn't come because he had some people in the studio. So he sent his studio assistant in a little mini Metro with VCS3. And I got a friend who works in Bristol. He was actually the person who did the other week on the radio show. We used to share originally. So I'd do it one week and he'd do it the other week. So it was Jez and Rob's Adventures in Sound, was what it was called originally. So I drove down to his cafe in Bristol, in Stokecroft, and waited there for this guy to turn up in this little mini Metro, and he'd driven like a maniac from Wales. And the car was all sort of scraped down the side. Oh my God. And I got it out, and I thought, oh, this looks like a piece of it was all dirty, and it just didn't. All the knobs and things seemed a bit dodgy. But I thought, fuck it, I'll just buy it. So I gave him the money in cash. I just thought, I hope for the best. I mean, it seemed like a good idea at the time, because when I'd be talking to Robin, a new one would have cost 3,750 plus carriage plus VAT, so a lot more than 4,000. And this one came with a flight case and the DK2 keyboard controller, which I very rarely use. I have used it, but I very rarely use it. If I'm doing this sort of solo VCS3 gig, and I need sort of like a bit pitch control, more than just wiggling the vernier, which I can do well because it's a bit random anyway. So yeah, I'll use that. So yeah, so I got it, and I took it home and I took the verniers apart and cleaned them out and put them back together again, and they all work mostly. One of them you have to pull a bit on it to get it to engage properly. And I bought a whole lot of new ones, but they don't look as nice. Yeah, yeah. No, no. I was running the OP1 into the back of the VCS3 and ring modulating it with the VCS3. And I've got a separate little DD20 thing that I use for looping. Yeah, just 60 sort of second delay. So things go into the loop and out of the loop, and it sort of builds and dies, and you know. It's a really fun That's what you've got to do. Every sound. I've actually just done 2 of my radio shows in a row, which I call the Beauty and the Beast Parts 1 and 2. Well, I don't know. I think the VCS3 is definitely the best. I'm not an engineering over this one. Very aesthetic. It's a very wibbly beast. At least 10 different synthesizers. Oh, this is at Awakenings. Yes, because around the time that I kind of started getting involved in the British electronic music scene, I started going to a few gigs, and there wasn't really anywhere for new people to play. So a friend of mine and I started putting on Awakenings, and they actually started off in Leeds. We did our first 2 years in 2005 and 2006 at the Brudenell. Yeah, yeah. So we did 2 years at the Brudenell, and then the other guy fell out with the management over money, and they stopped us playing. And he decided he wasn't going to be involved anymore. And I thought, well, this has been really good, so I should try and find somewhere. It took me a year, but I eventually found that I knew someone who worked in a school in Burton-on-Trent. So we actually did it in Burton-on-Trent at Paget School from 2008 till 3 years ago, probably, when we moved to Rugeley, because he retired, you see, and the school had changed management and they weren't that interested in it. So we ended up having to move to Rugeley, which was kind of like lucky, really. One of the other guys who helps out, Martin, he just lives around the corner, so he knew this place and he was going to put gigs on there anyway. So we were like, oh shit, we haven't got anywhere to go. And he went, oh, you can come try and do it here. And we've been doing it there ever since, until this year, of course, when we haven't done any hardly. We haven't done it at all. Yes. Um, on the right of the pinboard, there's actually a row of little, I suppose they're probably little 8th inch jack inputs, and they've got VC shape for oscillator 1, 2, and 3, two inverters, and four multiple jacks. And you can plug a plug into the oscillator 1, and then on the other end of a bit of wire, there's a pin, and it connects the patch matrix through this wire into that thing, into the actual voltage controlled shape of the wave shape. So you can actually do things that it wasn't designed to do. Yeah. Um, if you had a Mark II, you can actually use the later ones had got a card slot. You can actually use that card slot to sort of break the whole matrix out into all sorts of stuff. But because I've got a Mark One, I can't do that. But it has been modified intensively. Uh, when I was talking to Thibault Sandra, he told me that he actually bought it from a guy called Edward Williams, who was the composer of Life on Earth and one of the owners of EMS at one point. Yeah, well, he sold it off to Datanomics or something like that, and then he bought it from Datanomics, and he sold it back to Robin Wood. Yeah, it's never stopped actually. EMS has always existed. It's just been very very quiet some of the time. Yeah, so if you look at pictures of Edward Williams VCS threes on the internet, you can see what modifications, and they're exactly the same on mine. So it's very likely that he did them all. And I've had some more done. Uh, I've got oscillator sync added to oscillators 1 and 2. I've got a random voltage generator mod put in, which was quite good because it's on a sort of push pull switch. So the knobs in the normal position do noise, and then you put it out, and then it sample and holds the noise or one of the other oscillators, I think, and you can choose between it using different push pull options and things like that. It's quite really clever, actually. There's a guy called I think it's Pin Electronics or something like that. Someone like that did the design. Oh yes, yeah. Well, the Prophet VS came out at the end of '86, I think, 85, '86, and was one of the last synthesizers that Sequential actually built before they got bought out by Yamaha. Now, Yamaha owned a part stake in Korg, and some of the people who worked on the Prophet VS actually designed the Wave Station, which was the next sort of vector synth along. Then Yamaha did their own one, which was the SY22. Yeah. First vector synth I ever had was the SY35, which was a slightly later version of the SY22, or in the mid 90s, mid to late 90s, because I couldn't afford a Wave Station because they were too expensive. I eventually got one in about 99, I think. And I thought, yeah, also very low. Yeah, just in. Hey. Yeah. Um, it's not the same as the original Wave Station. The original Wave Station, you could layer up to 8 different sets of 4 sounds together, which could make quite a lot of noise, and you could sort of split them, layer them across the keyboard. This one's only got 4 sounds, so you can layer 4 sounds together. So it's a lot simpler, which is good in a way, because it's the other one you never remember where you were with everything. And patch management on the old Wave Station was a nightmare because you had very limited memory. You had like 50 slots for wave sequences, then 50 patches, and then 100 performance type things. So you had not enough stuff to fill them. You'd end up having to use the same things over and over again in different ways to sort of like build sounds. Whereas this one you can have as many as you want of anything. It seems like the memory's dynamic, so and it's got loads of it. So you can just all the wave sequences you want, have one in each part over and over and over and over again. Loads. And it's got knobs. And you can randomize things and you can like control things, and I haven't got around to all that yet. I've just made some nice ambient metallic sweepy harmonic sounds, which is what I like using them for really. Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, even the Buckler Music Easel had this card slot as well. Yeah, so it's quite weird. I mean, I was listening to your thing with Matthew Bourne when you were talking about the Buchler stuff, and it's like um, it's almost like the West Coast stuff. EMS was more West Coast because they also didn't really do keyboards. I mean, the keyboards were more of an afterthought. It didn't come with one; you had to buy it separately. It was, I mean, if you look at the original manuals and stuff for the VCS3, it's a studio. It's designed as a studio rather than as a synthesizer as such. Yeah. fantastic. I'd love to see a picture of that. Oh, excellent. Yeah, I've got some of his music. Yeah, it's the stuff he did for Doctor Who, Dalek Master Plan and stuff like that. So, all sort of electronically treated acoustic stuff. Very interesting. Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, the hat's my stage gear. It's very simple. I put a hat on and that's it. Yeah. Oh yes, the Continuum Mini. It's fantastic. Yes, ribbon controllers, but much better, much better. I've really been into MPE, the multi-dimensional polyphonic, whatever it's called, expression thing. Like the Rolly and the Continuum, and I've got a little thing called the Jouet as well. Have you seen that? The Jouet, I bought that a few years ago on a Kickstarter. It's weird because it's like the controls are like a rubber strip that you can take off and you can mix and match, put different sets on. You can have drum controllers, and you can have a ribbon type thing, and you can have like a keyboard and sort of weird domes as knobs that you can wibble. It's all rubber, and the machine remembers the settings. They're stored like in a chip in the actual thing that you stick on. You control it from, you sort of edit it from the computer, and you can just take off one thing, put another one, and it completely changes it. So I got two of it. There was one that was a bit like a continuum, and I've got two because I've got them programmed in different keys. One to D minor or C. Oh, I've got a Micro Monster. It's fantastic. Yeah, I got my Micro Monster to go with the Jouet. So yeah, it's my baby continuum. I use the Jouet mostly with Animoog or the Micro Monster. It's good with Animoog. I like it. I mean, I've had all of them over the years. I've had a DX7, I've had an FY77, and I've got the Modi X now, and I like it. Yeah, it's interesting. I like the new stuff that they put in, and all the strange waveforms that you can use, and different types of weird curves and stuff. Yeah, and then the last synth I bought is also FM. It's a Preen FM2. Yes, I've only just got mine, so I haven't really got to grips with it yet, but mine's black. It's classic. Bought it from someone in the Ukraine or something like that who built it. Well, it wasn't Estonia, it was somewhere else. Yeah. But yeah, yeah. Well, I'll probably just use a separate power. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I bought my first Nord modular in 2003 from Turnkey. Um, it was like I think they were about £1,600 new, and I got mine for about 580 because it was the last end of line stuff sort of thing, and it was amazing. I'd actually had a micro modular before that, and I really liked the micro modular, and I just thought, well, for micro modulars, what can go wrong? And obviously, I bought the G2 as well when they came out. Um, I've still got them both, and the G2 is just amazing, and does completely different things to the Nord modular. You'd think they'd be similar, but I think I don't know. I think the Nord modular originally is quite simple compared to the G2. The G2 is just amazing things you can do with it. Mind blowing. Yes, yes. I went downstairs and had a look at their little museum. I doubt. Wow. Yeah, I never did. I don't think I went when that was available. I mean, I can't remember what they had in there now, but it was quite interesting. But yeah. Oh God. Well, it's it's in the simplest form. It's just me messing about with some sounds, really. Um, Organizing them. Organizing sounds. Yeah, that's kind of like what I do. Sometimes, yeah, yeah. I mean, I've never really been one for like sitting down and writing things down and learning them and playing them. So I've just kind of like worked out how to do it on the fly, and you know, that's it. I mean, sometimes it will just be a synth and a looper. I always have my little chaos pad for filtering things because everything goes through that ridiculously. Yeah, yeah. It's amazing how much extra expression you can get just by filtering sounds with your finger whilst you play them. I mean, you can tap it. You can. Oh, I've even got a little. This is my pebble of uncertainty. Very high tech. You put the pebble on the chaos pad and you wibble it. Yeah, It's just a pebble. But the funny thing is, when they brought out the new mini Chaos pad, it doesn't work on that. No, because it's the same sort of touch as like a pad. It has to be like whatever. Yeah, that one. Whereas the other one's just touch pressure, so it works with the stone, and the other one doesn't. Ridiculous. I had to sell my. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just the new mini ones that don't. So I mean, I've even done a set with like two K oscillators, the old yellow flat ones, square ones, and two chaos pads, and you can just like put stones on and hold them for thrones and things. I mean, the DD20, the DD20 that is the looper that I use. I've got four of those, so I can have four different things going into four different length loops. So yeah, yeah, it's amazing. It's fantastic. I mean, the day I got my DD20 was the day I stopped doing big gigs with loads of gear, basically. I mean, I had an electrics repeater as well, which is even better, but it's a bit noisy and a bit big, and the power connector on the back's a bit dodgy, so I don't use that much anymore. But it can do loads of stuff. It can do really long loops, but yeah, I just like the DD20 because it's simple. You turn the effect amount up, and the loops stay longer. You turn it down, and they go away quicker. That's it. Feedback. Yeah, that's the one. Well, um, obviously I've been doing stuff with Awakenings for quite a while, but that was in Burton, and I like knew loads of people in Nottingham, so wanted to do something in Nottingham, but wasn't sure what. And the Awakenings thing is kind of like very, how would I put it, as middle of the road electronic music, not really experimental, not really weird, not really freaky or anything like that. It's kind of old school, as it were. So I couldn't really do anything there either with that, and I was kind of getting into more experimental stuff. Then I decided in 2012 that I'd done 5 years worth of it, and that was enough. So I handed it over to somebody else to do, and then sort of like took a step back, and now only help out with lots of things, but don't organise the bands, don't do any of that. I just sort of like do the lights on the day and help with the sound and do the website and shit like that. So, retired not. uh, um, in 2013, I went on tour around the country with a couple of Belgians who were friends of a promoter I knew in Nottingham. And we ended up playing our last but one gig at Weird Garden. And that was a very, very early Weird Garden gig. I don't know whether it was the first or second or something like that, but it was very near the beginning of Weird Garden. And I was just thought, this is really nice. Right. in something like this in Nottingham. And um, I'd been adventuring in sound for a long time, and I thought I want to set up my own little church of sound. And it took me another year to find an appropriate venue, which ended up being downstairs in a tea room originally, which is probably before you came. And we had a little room downstairs, and we had projections on the wall and seats and incense and, you know, all sorts of weird people playing. And it started off really kind of as a place for me and my mates to go and just gig. Gradually, people found out about it and wanted to play, mostly because of Weird Garden. I think Weird Garden kept telling people, "Oh, you can go and talk to Jez because he's got something in Nottingham." Oh yes, oh yes. Gavin's been coming to to Church of Sound for a long time. So yeah, that's a friend of someone else who played. And then I found out that he did his own stuff, so I asked him to come and do a grey frequency set. So yeah, that's yeah. And we've been doing stuff together as well. There's Andromeda Phase, all sorts of stuff. So um, yeah, so Church of Sound. Well, started in 2014, did about 8 gigs that year, and I've gradually moved up to doing it monthly until this year. And hopefully, when things become available again, I'll be doing it again. Uh, we've got a year to reschedule. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a good idea and it's a good laugh. Yeah. Well, I'm surprised my video's held up because my internet is terrible usually. So you're lucky if it has. Is that the one? Is that the one I sent you? That was a load of pictures of interesting places that I manipulated and added symbols and things to, and bits of strange colour and stuff. Yeah, and then just turned it into a slideshow. That was back in the old days before I had like the ability to do video properly. Everything was just slideshows and long fades and stuff like that. But yeah, moved on. It's 10 years ago now. I remember that gig. I mean, well, I'm moving into laser visuals. Last year, someone I know posted this Kickstarter on their Facebook page for a thing called the Radiator laser synth, and I looked into it, and it's the same person who did the Phenol Kilpatrick guy, and he's basically built a standalone synthesizer for producing visuals using a laser, and it's a synth. It's got oscillators and things that do different shapes, and LFOs and modulators and all that sort of stuff. And it actually makes sound as well. And one of the extended things on the Kickstarter was that you'll do video, so you don't need a laser. But I probably will get a laser eventually because I've always wanted a laser. I love lasers, and it just does all the geometric patterns, and it's controllable in real time, and you can feed sound into it and everything. And it wasn't that expensive, and I just thought I've got to buy one. And it's over a year since it finished, but this year's just wiped so many things out. But they're shipping soon, hopefully. So that's what I'm going into, because I've actually really liked the combination of music and visuals, trying to combine the two in a way that they're interactive. Right. I mean, I've been doing loads of gigs where I play along to some weird visuals that I've hacked together at home. I mean, it's funny, that gig that you were going to show, it took me 4 hours to put together the visuals for that, and 45 minutes to play my set. So this is much more work. Much more work. It's ridiculous. Oh, no, yeah. Well, I figure this little radiator thing, it's got presets and stuff, so you can build up a load of stuff that works, and it can be synced to what you're playing, and just from sound. So that seems fairly cool. Well, I don't really plan very much for the future. It just sort of happens. Um, it's all been a very sort of evolving process. I had no idea when I started that I'd ever have a VCS3. I had no idea where I would go with my music, and I still have no idea where I'm going. It's all much more interesting if you find out as you're going along. So it depends. I mean, this radiator thing didn't exist, so there's no way you could have planned to use it. But now it's available, you think, how can I use it? And when something else comes along, how can I use it? Will this fit in with things? Will this give you more opportunities? It's just the way it goes. It's technology. It's just annoying how much stuff keeps coming out. Yeah, I like both. The best bits from the past, but new stuff from the future. I mean, uh, there aren't very many new things nowadays, though. I have to say. Um, but yeah, I mean, I remember when I first saw a Continuum, and that was 11 years ago now, and I thought that was pretty amazing. So, you know, yeah, yes. Well, who knows? Just see what happens. That's what I do. Yeah. Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. It's been cool. I shall try and tune into the next one.